I guess we can go ahead. Well, it's
10 seconds. I think
10 seconds.
We're good to start. I think it's safe.
So this is our welcome. This is our December expert monthly webinar, and I was lucky enough this month to have my husband, Dr. Matt Vermeer, come on. So Matt is going to talk to us a little bit about, we thought it would be fun to do something different for December. So we're going to do kind of a little race recap. So he's going to talk a little bit about, he just did the 70.3 World Championships in Marbella, Spain, which was amazing. And then what else do we have on the docket? We're going to talk a little bit. We've got some frequently asked questions kind of about supplements, like what we take, supplements for athletes, what we don't take, and kind of the reasons why. And then maybe a little bit about like the winter illness, and getting sick. And then is it okay to train? Is it not okay? What, how long you can expect to recover. And so that's kind of the plan. So
yes.
Do you want to kick it off? Well, tell us a little bit about this. So actually first, how did you qualify?
So
where?
At our first 70.3 of the year, Gulf Coast in Panama City, it was an interesting day because it was a duathlon essentially with the swim being canceled. And some crazy weather on the bike. And then the entire race getting canceled towards the end for everyone else who's still out on course. But yeah, so I got a roll down spot to the World Championships, finishing the highest I've ever finished in my age group. I think I was 11th that day. And got the email a few weeks later for the World Championships. And
that was weird though, because normally when you qualify, you go to the award ceremony, you have to pay your spot, you have to take it right then. And so this was different because he got like 2 days to think about it. Be like, do we want to go to Spain?
Yeah. Typically, if you're going to the award ceremony and for the roll down, you really should have mentally prepared if you want to go or not. So there shouldn't be a big choice. I wasn't expecting it, so I didn't even entertain the idea that I was going to get a spot. So it was very fun to get one. And so we decided we had our season all laid out. So it was going to be Gulf Coast, and we're doing Augusta 70.3 and then North Carolina 70.3 in a 4-week stretch. And then looking at it, I was like, well, this race is 2 weeks after North Carolina. So for a long time, we went back and forth toying with the idea of, do I just spectate at North Carolina? Or do I race all 3 races? And so we made the decision, my coach, to really race at North Carolina and go and kind of have a celebration race for the end of the year in Marbella. Because as he put it, you could train just for this race, but these guys in Europe are different. And he's like, so it's, you can go and have a phenomenal day still, but don't put too much pressure on yourself because it's just a different kind of racing over there.
Yeah. And I think that's a good thing, like for people to keep in mind for any race, really. You have to have like the right expectations when you go into something, because, this was his 4th one in.
It was the third 7.3 in 6 weeks.
The third one in 6 weeks. And then 2 weeks later went to, Spain. And so just trying to think about, some people might do 3 halves in a year. Some people might do 2 halves and a full, and just trying to think about, you don't need to go in every race. You're going to race it, but not every race needs to be like your goal race, because it's a lot to ask your body to do that. So I think that was part of going in with that expectation that this was going to be like, he's going to race it, but be a celebration race. And then also the course for the World Championships is always really hard. And this was a beast.
We'll get there. Yeah. It was not the course best suited to my triathlon abilities, but that's fine. So yeah, we decided to take the spot. And so we did North Carolina, and we both had PRs that day. And so we had great races. And then we got to come home, recover for a week. And then it was time to pack and get ready for international trip, which was the first time we did that. And so we got to put the bike in the bike box, and, not without drama, as it always is, as we couldn't get drop the cockpit low enough because it was stuck in there.
We were calling coach the night before because he is kind of our bike mechanic. So we're like, we can't get the cockpit down. What do we do? Because Matt's pretty tall. But we figured it out.
Moral of the story is you should probably try and adjust and lower your cockpit probably more than once a year, because you sweat in there and it gets salty. and the salt causes it to stick, and that makes it, more dramatic than it needs to be.
Yeah.
So if you're planning on traveling with your bike, adjust it every now and then and just loosen some bolts up and just make sure everything's still sliding like it should. But we got there. It was a crazy trip over. We were supposed to have 3 flights and they turned it to 4. So we got to fly from Tallahassee to Atlanta.
I think we were awake for 30 hours.
Yeah, 30 hours.
Total.
Well, so the flight from New York and to Madrid was supposed to be our window to sleep. Unfortunately, the first 2 hours was some of the most and the roughest turbulence I've been on an airplane. So just bouncing all around.
Yeah.
And so the captain coming on every 15 minutes, apologizing that we were bouncing all around. And then after it finally settled down, then they turned all the lights on and we're trying to serve dinner.
So there really wasn't, there was maybe 3 hours of sleep in 30 hours. So we got there, but our coaches, they travel a lot internationally. And so they had said, okay, because you're going that direction, you're going to get in, we got in at was it
morning, 10 o'clock.
10 a.m. So she's like, you're going to be really tired, but you got to try to stay awake until, 6 o'clock, at least their time, because it's going to help you adjust better to the time zone. So we actually went for a short run, just like a 15-20 minute run, just to and we felt pretty good. I don't think you felt super.
No, I was pretty out of it. So Brittany felt better than I did, but yeah, I was kind of feeling like I was a zombie trying to run. And then we did a very tiring and exciting trip to a grocery store. That on our way back up, that was, we were both delirious at that point. So that was really fun to try and remember my Spanish. But yeah, we got Airbnb and we got a few days of practicing swimming and tuning the bike up and, practicing descending again and the crosswinds and all of that that comes with that. And so, yeah, got to race day and felt pretty good. There's a lot of hoopla that goes around any world championship race. And so, you got bigger expos, you got more events happening, you got a million people there standing in the way and making it more difficult to check bikes in and that. So
you could literally fill up the entire day with something every 15 minutes between the pro interviews and Q&As and this fun race and all these things. And, I get it. A lot of people want to go to places and they're like, I want to experience it all and do things. And our coaches are like, okay, remember, pick a couple of things. You have stuff you need to do, pick a couple things and then get out of there. Cause even just being in that environment and around high energy gets you amped up a little too soon. And without knowing it, you're just, you are increasing kind of the energy level when you don't need that, right? A couple of days before a race. So we tried to be good. We did some open water swims, which were amazing over there. The water was cold. It was a lot colder than I expected.
It was low 60s, but it was comfortable with a wetsuit on. Mm-hmm. And then we had a good day that, waves were a little choppier, and then we had a calmer day the next day. So we got a little bit of variety in the ocean. And the most fun was there was, a team that organized a tiny, it was not a coffee boat per se, but it was like a juice boat.
Yeah.
So they were parked way offshore, and when we saw it during a practice swim and swam out to it and had watermelon juice and hung out on a boat for a few minutes.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And then swam back. So it was like a miniature version of the Kona coffee boat.
Yeah.
Not nearly as exciting as that one is, but still.
So talk a little bit about the race setup, because the World Championship is different. So you've got the women and men competing on different days. So women on Saturday and the men on Sunday. And then also the start time was wildly different for different athletes. It's not like a normal race, where everyone starts at 7:30 and, everyone's in the water or 7, everyone's in the water in an hour. Yeah. This was not like that.
Yeah. So the women's race being Saturday, men's race Sunday. So they had a lot. The women got a little bit more leniency in when they get to check things in, because you could go in the morning and drop things. Obviously, transitions were being used, and so the men had to wait until after the women's race had wrapped up, and so we were checking in things a lot later than we're accustomed to for racing. And then I had an actual workout to do the morning of the women's race, so we just went and did my workout rather than go and get in the environment and watch any of the women's race.
But we did watch on YouTube because our coach was like, okay, they're going to follow the pro women. So you can watch the descents, see kind of what it looks like. Cause we hadn't seen the full course. We saw part of it. So that was helpful to see kind of what it looked like and where tricky spots might be. And
and then.
So what was your start time? It was pretty normal.
Yeah, I mean, I think the transition opened at 6 o'clock, which is a lot later than transitions open, and it closed at 7 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then the race started at it was like 7:50. I think the pros started. And fortunately, we were like, I think the third age group to start. So we were 8:25 or 8:30. Yeah. And so, I self-seated myself towards the back of my age group as the rolling start, just because I wasn't going to be in the water fighting with the guys who wanted to win the age group. That was not my jam. Like, you guys who are real intense can go out first. I'll be back here doing my own swim.
And it was 8 people at a time.
Yep.
And a little different because the beaches over there, instead of sandy, it's all little pebbles. So it's rock. So like people are trying to run on. I actually know one of our friends like twisted her ankle. She was a little aggressive coming out. So like it was definitely, that was different. But just the environment was different because there were people that we know that started at like 9:40. So by then, the ocean conditions are different for different athletes depending on when you started. So that was you got pretty good.
Yeah, they were good. I mean, a few light waves and nothing too dramatic. And, it was, the interesting part of the World Championship swim is I'm used to all different paces that you get at normal 70.3s. And, a lot of us just for the same, that same group of big people were together for the entire swim because a lot of guys were just swimming the same pace. And so the turn buoys were really crowded with my little pack of people that I sailed into, and ended up having a decent swim. It was good. Wasn't my fastest swim of all time, but on a tourney kind of course. And in the ocean, it was, I think, my first true ocean swim in a race.
No, because we normally do lakes, and rivers, Chattanooga.
Yeah. But yeah, so it was my first true ocean swim in a 70.3. And so I came out of the water feeling good, which has been a new phenomenon this year with the volume of swimming that we're doing, just increasing that. And so the pictures of me coming out of the water are looking dramatically better than the drowned back version of 3 or 4 years ago. And so
transition, talk about transition because it's different.
Yep.
It tends to be at World Championships. It seems like they often do split transitions because when I did St. George, they also did that too. I don't know if that's a trend.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, we had bags that we had to put all of our stuff in so that nothing was on, other than it could be attached to your bike. And so the people who can figure out how to get on their bike and put their shoes on the bike could leave shoes on the bike. But that is not me. I put my shoes on, my helmet on, ran my bike out. And yeah, so, I mean, I took my time in transition. I made a friend. We were talking about the race and how we we're looking forward to the giant hills coming up on the bike. And so, yeah, the course in Marbella, there's a 70.3 there normally, but it's a little bit different on the bike. But this one, you had about 3 miles, 5K that were flattish in town. And then you made the turn and headed towards the little town of Ohen. And it was all uphill from there. And so all the way to Ohen, I was averaging 7 or 8 miles an hour, putting out good power for me. I mean, looking at the climb, I think I was pushing 230-ish watts, which is good. And, in my opinion, and it was very humbling to see, all these guys just coming by me like I'm not even moving. And it's just like, well, I mean, what am I going to do with that? Like that is a power level I do not have in this kind of scenario. And so, but it's one of those things that, you have to do your own race at times, right? Unless you're, racing at the very, pointy tip of the race. You're better served just racing where you can race and just letting much faster people do their thing too.
I think not having experience on this type of a climbing court, because how much was it? 50?
The total elevation gain was
56?
5,800
5,800 for
feet of
56
elevation.
miles, which is insane.
So, yeah, I mean, it's over 100 per mile of
So it's just up.
net gain. But I mean, it's that first 13 and a half miles, I think, was 2,000 feet of it. And so you got through Ohen, there's a little downhill, we got an aid station, and then it was just little switchbacks all the way up for, 1,000 feet. And then it kind of flattened out and you had some downhills, and the back end of the bike, you rode all the way out, which was net downhill. And then you turned around and you had to climb all the way back up to Ohen, which is the highest point. And then you hit that same steep downhill.
You guys go down very fast.
Yeah, actually the fastest point was downhill still on the maybe 20 miles into the bike. And I finally decided that I had enough when I think it was 46 miles an hour.
Which that's too. Yeah. I'm 34 and that's I'm good.
So I was like, that's fast. That's fast enough. I'm comfortable with not going any faster. So I feathered the brakes and backed off a little bit.
And it was the thing also is you get wind because you're that high in the mountains. So, and the
wind didn't start until the way back. And so
on the way back
that descending. And so by the time you got back up and over to Ohen, and then you come back down and you have that 8-mile descent back into town, you're coming around these bends, and I was probably, 38, 39 miles an hour. And I remember coming around a turn and just caught a crosswind, and felt like I flew for a second. I got pushed across the road. I'm like,
and he did have a disc wheel.
Yeah.
And some people will be like, why are you using your disc wheel on that hilly of a course? And we had talked to Coach about it, and he had, specific reason why, because it's actually
my disc wheel is lighter than
his regular
actual wheel. And so you get the aerodynamic benefit and not really a weight penalty. But it is squirrely in the crosswinds. And so, it was about keeping weight low on the bike and, strung through the pedals and just.
We got taught how to descend this year.
Yep.
So that was very helpful.
Yeah.
Because these are real descents, not like Florida downhill.
Yep. And so, I got to descend and, average in the high 30s for, 7 or 8 miles down the hill. So that was a lot of fun.
And we also had to think about nutrition changing a little bit because he was going to be on the bike for longer than he normally is. You're on the bike for over 3 hours, and that's not in a normal half. You're like 2 and 2.5 hours.
Yep.
So he needed to plan for extra snacks.
Yep. So I just brought an extra gel that I would normally have, and normally have 3 bottles of nutrition, and I got to drink all of them this time. So that was the main difference. But I got back to T2, which was fun because it was in an underground parking garage.
That was sweet.
And I had a vague idea of where I was going because they had a diagram, but I couldn't actually go and look the day before because the women's bikes were still over there. And so, I didn't have a clear idea where I was, but fortunately found it really quick. Then I had to run probably, 400 yards down to where my running shoes and things were, through the parking garage.
Did you feel like running when you got off? Because I was wondering if you were going to feel like running when you got off that bike.
I actually felt better than I expected after being on the bike for 3 hours and 15 minutes or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And then I think with all the downhill, I got, a good stretch of recovery for the legs a little bit. And so, I got out onto the run and, felt decent-ish, I would say. Not as good as I felt in North Carolina, but the bike was a lot longer.
And the temperature changed too, because it was pretty cold in the morning. Well, 40.
No.
Or am I thinking North Carolina?
Yeah, North Carolina was cold. It was 60. Like 60, and the high that in the day was 72. So it wasn't a dramatic difference, but
you guys looked hot.
The afternoon sun when you got out on the coast road was pretty warm. I was dumping water and walking every aid station as my normal plan to get nutrition in, to get water, to stay cool. And then I would take sips of my sports drink that I carried with me. But after probably 3 or 4 miles, my stomach didn't want any more sports drinks. So then I switched to gels and water.
So it was 3 laps?
2 laps.
2 laps. And I'll ask you what your favorite part is. The coolest part that I thought was they got to run out because there's the kind of like a harbor where the swim was, and there's a lighthouse and a jetty, and it goes out, and there's Puerto Banús is the name of that area, and so it's lots of yachts and super fancy shops all along the harbor, and so there's this jetty, and if you watch any of the pro coverage, you would see the pros going out there first, but all the age groupers had to go run out there too, and so that was, I think, I'm probably no shade at all and windy, but it was a kind of a cool, that's not something you normally get like on other courses.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely unique. There was, a pretty gnarly wind once you had to turn around. You got to the far end of the jetty and turned back into the headwind. So that was less fun. But it was probably my favorite part of the run course was the section that was shaded. And so you came past, where transition was, and there was a shaded section of road, and you looped through crowds, and there was a lot of people yelling and cheering in there. So that was a good, time for me. That was my favorite section.
And the interesting part too was it was a multi-surface course, so they had to run on like hard packed sand, like it was kind of like clay, kind of, yeah. And then they had to run on over bridges. They ran on the jetty, which was kind of like gravel. They had to run on the ramps to get over the roads. So, and it was, as a spectator, kind of insane because the bike was coming in on the same part as the run. So you got runners and cyclists coming, and everywhere was blocked off. So it was very hard to get, like, basically my job when I'm spectating is I have the tracker up with all the athletes and friends from our team, and I'm trying to see as many of them as I can. So it was actually funny. We looked like, what did you have? I think for the day with everything, and then racing that, running half marathon, was it like 28,000 steps or something, which is pretty normal. And I think mine was 24. And all I did was just run around the course trying to take pictures of them. But
yeah,
I got to see you a lot, and we had a friend there from Florida, actually.
Yep.
David. So that was a lot of fun, and they were in the same age group. So, and we got to, the finish kind of on the beach was cool too.
Yeah. I mean, so coming around, the third time over the pedestrian ramp, and then you had a half mile until the finish line, and they turned you out on the beach, and you didn't actually have to run on sand. They had, carpeting down that whole way. And then the giant ramp up to the finishing arch, which I think is cruel, but they do it to spotlight the athletes. It's a good picture.
You're like, please don't fall.
But you do have a really steep ramp just to get to the finishing picture. But yeah, I mean, overall, my half marathon time was, probably my top 3 half marathons still.
So, I mean, he still did.
Yeah.
It was, I think it was great. He definitely seemed very tired, like more tired than normal. I think I just sat him down, like, you sit here and I'm going to go get stuff and just hang out and we'll get you coffee. But it was kind of bizarre too, because I got to go in the tent with them and see him and David, and it was like the most bizarre snacks ever. Like in Florida or like in US, we normally have pizza, sandwiches. They had some type of chicken stew. They had a salad with tofu on it. They had
some weird stuff.
Some really bizarre things, which are interesting.
It's weird. Yeah, there's a soup of some sort, I think. Yeah. I don't know.
But so I think probably now that we've done one international race and it was great. The thing that was weird is that you would walk around and see people, in town, and they're wearing Ironman stuff, and I'm super friendly. So I'm like, hi, I just talk to people, and a lot of them wouldn't speak back to me. And I was like, is no one friendly here? What's going on? Matt's like, I don't think they speak English. And it didn't register in my head. I'm not in America. So, and there were a lot of people who spoke English, but we met people from, you saw people from Denmark, Poland, Germany. There's people from all over, and we did meet a few Americans, but it was just kind of weird because you would speak to people and a lot of them would speak English, but then there's some that just kind of look, and I'm like, oh, sorry. And I don't speak hardly any Spanish. So Matt had to help me. But so that was kind of the race. And then we, the second week, decided to go on vacation since we were already over there. So we went back to Malaga, where the airport was. Stayed in the city center, and probably if anyone saw the blog post, I took probably 1,200 photos.
There was a lot of pictures taken.
on our trips, doing things. But I think probably one of the highlights, honestly, was the food. It was the best. Like every single meal was incredible.
Yeah, very good seafood.
Yeah,
right in the south of Spain.
And the markets. And the fun thing was walking around town. We saw at least 2 to 3 athletes from the race somewhere every day. So it seems like a lot of people had the same idea, which is kind of fun. We'd go to hikes and to palaces, and you'd see like a little Ironman backpack. I'm like, look.
Yep.
So that's kind of the race recap. And since we had Matt on, I was like, well, we're going to use his doctorate expertise because we had some questions the other day. Someone was asking about it was actually a question about athletic greens, just randomly, like, do we use the supplement? Do we like it? And we have in the past. We tried that one. And so then that kind of got us thinking about some athletes are like, is there a benefit to taking multivitamin? Like how should I be supplementing my, daily nutrition and then race nutrition? So Matt has kind of opinion about multivitamins. And then I think he was going to talk about what he takes and what we take as athletes that are helpful and why. And so what is your thoughts?
When we talk supplements, there's a few different, ways to look at them. And so you're going to have supplements that are for kind of overall health. You're going to have supplements that are for athletic performance. And those are two, sometimes overlapping, but usually different things. And then there's supplements, specifically when you're talking about triathlon, you're looking for supplements that are helping with endurance specific sports. And so some of the supplements that I recommend people take and that we mostly take on the athletic side of things is, there's been a lot of studies that show the benefit of creatine on, athletic performance. There's a lot more in the, short kind of powerful burst kind of activity, but at lower doses. And so, looking at somewhere between 2 and 3 grams a day, they're showing some, athletic performance in the endurance side of things. And so typically in my recovery protein shakes after workouts, I will add a scoop of creatine to that just because I feel like it helps. And then with creatine as well, there's a lot of neurocognitive benefit. And so that it can help you kind of feel better if you're not sleeping so well at some of the doses. It can help with just memory in general. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of fun, newer research on that just has other potential benefits for it. Another one that may have benefit that I've kind of dropped out just because it can be hard to tolerate is beta-alanine.
The weird tingly one.
Yes. And so if you've ever done a pre-workout and had those weird ant feelings and itchiness and tingly sensation, you probably took a beta-alanine supplement in there. And so it's been shown for short, powerful bursts. And so, probably better for short course athletes rather than Ironman athletes. But, when you talk about able to sustain repeated surges on things like the bike and some of those type benefits, beta-alanine is up there. Other things that, are marketed heavily that, are kind of athlete specific, using some of the beetroot products. And so
is that nitrate?
So you're looking to increase nitric oxide. And so the theory behind it is a vasodilator, more blood flow to muscles equals better athletic performance. In my anecdotal experience, I've had, limited benefit, and at least in my feelings and power outputs with using some of the beet products. I've not used all of them out there, but that's another one with some evidence.
So what do you take?
Well, for athletic performance, creatine is in there. Mm-hmm. The other things with athletic performance is obviously making sure you are well fueled enough. All of the supplements in the world will not help it if you are under fueled, and you're not getting, carbs during your workouts and after your workouts to, get more, refill the glycogen stores in the muscles. Creatine will not help you if you're just chronically underfueled. And so creatine is really the athletic performance thing. We use whey protein post-workout for recovery. And so those are just the athletic side of things. And this time of year, the other big supplement side is immunity. And what are these supplements that can help you not get sick, or at least help you not be as sick? And so one of the ones with the best evidence on upper respiratory tract infections, especially if you're deficient in it, is vitamin D. And so patients who are below the recommended vitamin D levels, if they supplement vitamin D, have a significant decrease in upper respiratory tract infections. If you have enough vitamin D, then you probably don't have as big of a benefit from the supplement, but it's still beneficial for long-term immunity health outside of that, bone health, and going from there. Other things in shorter bursts, when you're traveling or under more stress or training load is high, doing a zinc supplement can be beneficial. Also in short bursts, doing vitamin C supplements can be beneficial. But I save those for, like I said, periods of high stress from either travel or from training load. Some of the antioxidants and those supplements like vitamin C have been shown to blunt, training response. And so they can actually hinder you if you're taking them all the time. And so that's where it comes to, I don't like multivitamins so much because you're taking a lot of things you probably don't need in hopes that you're covering some small thing that you do need. And so I like get the blood test done, find out what you need, and take that specific vitamin.
Another thing also, which is in our protein shakes anyways, is B12, like B vitamins.
Yeah, I mean, B vitamins can help with energy, can help with recovery. Not necessarily with immune boosting, but they're water soluble. There's very little harm in having a supplement in B12, and especially if you're deficient, it can have a pretty profound benefit. Folks who are low in B12 tend to have more fatigue, more neuropathy issues when B12 gets very low.
Mom actually has to have B12 shots, and it's very handy because she's a doctor. She's like, calls, Matt, I need my shot.
Yeah, fortunately, it doesn't take a great deal of medical training to do those, so fairly easy. And so other things that we take to help with recovery, magnesium supplements.
Oh yeah.
Tend to be a nighttime thing for me.
Which one though? Magnesium.
I recommend either using magnesium citrate or magnesium glycinate. They absorb a little bit better. The downside of magnesium citrate is if you overdo it, it can cause a little bit of GI upset. In higher doses or much higher doses, it's used as colonoscopy prep in some places. So you don't want to overdo it. More is not better when it comes to magnesium. Some is good.
But if we had, if we raced a half, or like we had a really big weekend of training, we'll be like, oh, yeah, definitely going to be a little sore tomorrow. We'll tap magnesium before we go to bed.
Well, and I sleep better too after it. Also, those of us who drink coffee, which I do, tend to lose more magnesium because of that. And so, you don't hold on to those. So the magnesium helps with that.
I occasionally do melatonin sometimes.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if there's another benefit other than just helping you get a better quality of sleep.
No, I mean, that's
or help you fall asleep faster.
No, so melatonin is just what your body releases when it gets dark. And so all of us who look at screens for far too long into the evening, kind of like we're doing now as it's dark outside, you're signaling to your brain that it's not time for bed and not to release melatonin. And so that's where if you had a big work project or you were up late and doing that, melatonin can help. It's interesting. There was a study recently that, people who are taking melatonin on a very regular basis had higher incidence of things like heart failure, which I thought was a very interesting study. I just read, it was a few weeks ago, I read that one. Not sure if what that correlation means, or if the people who can't sleep are, have other things, more stress, or the lack of sleep is causing the issue.
Yeah.
All right, we're getting off track though. So back to immunity things. There is no supplements that is as good at helping your immune system outside of, the ones we listed, but getting 7 to 8 hours of sleeping. That is.
Are you saying that for a specific reason?
No, not that we're running on less sleep than we should, but if you're looking at what is the thing I need to do to keep myself as healthy as I possibly can be over the holidays, get your sleep, because that's where your body does the repairing. That's when it deals with stress. That's how your immune system stays healthy. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're not repairing those barriers that keep viruses out in your respiratory tract.
And that's actually kind of like talking about training and then recovery. I had read, one time someone had explained, it was a coach that explained that, training is not actually what we do while you're working out. That is working out. The training itself, like the improvements and stuff and the physical changes in your body happen during periods of rest. So the period of time, in between workouts, when you're sleeping. And so, our coach talks specifically, because she's a sports dietitian, about we can do all these hard workouts and accumulate all this volume, and that's great. But if you can't absorb it and it creates some type of a fitness gain, then all you're doing is you're just accumulating all this fatigue and you never end up improving. So you have to make sure that you've got that period, and you're doing the right things, like taking protein after, long or hard workouts, and making sure that you eat enough carbs before, during, and after. So
yes.
Yeah, all those things, super important. Yes. And sleep. But I was going to ask you, because a lot of people wonder, okay, if I get sick and then you don't like to take time off of training, so you're like, well, how bad is it? Could I still train, or should I not train? Am I just going to put myself back further? So what's the doctor rule of thumb for training when you are sick or not?
So basically, the very easy rule of thumb is if symptoms are above the neck, you are able to exercise. And so that means, if you just have a little congestion, a little sniffle, if you just have a little bit of a sore throat, have some sinus pressure, all of those things say that you can still exercise. Although when you're having those symptoms, VO2 max is not the time for that. But low zone 2 aerobic exercise is great during those times. If you're having other symptoms, right? If you're having a cough, if you're having fevers, if you're having body aches,
those stomach problems,
and those are all signs that, you're better off taking the time and giving your body the rest that it needs so it can help fight things off more effectively, right? Being sick is a stressor. Training is a stressor. Your body doesn't care where the stress is coming from. They can only handle so much of a stress load. And so when you're sick, you don't need to add, you're not trying to gain fitness and, breaking down muscle and having to repair that, because you want your body focused on getting you healthy, repairing the respiratory tract and not getting sicker. Because if you lower immunity, by training through illness, you can end up with a secondary bacterial infection, and then you end up with a pneumonia instead of just a cold. And then instead of being out for a few days of training, you're out for 4 weeks of training while you recover from that. And so it's one of those things that it just, from here up, you got a what I would call a yellow light. Train with caution.
Yeah.
Other symptoms, you're better off letting your body recover, and you'll be miles.
I think it's kind of the same rule of thumb for injury, right? Because it's like, okay, well, something kind of, I feel a little niggle, like sometimes when you end up like running or working out, it feels a little bit better, and then other times you're like, sometimes you want to push through something, and then you're like, well, should I take 2 days off now, or like 2 months after you hurt yourself? So it's kind of like, it is hard, but like making smart decisions. And I know it's challenging to ask this question, like, how long does it take to recover from being sick, because you don't know what you're sick with? But what are some of the signs that physiologically that green light, you can probably start resuming normal, or no, you're not good, we need to take a little more time?
And so, let's just, in this hypothetical situation, call, something like you end up with the flu during cold and flu season here in the winter time. And you have typically the symptoms are somewhere in that 4 to 6 days worth. And so certainly not considering training until fevers are gone without something that suppresses fever. And so that's not, oh, I don't have a fever. I took my Tylenol 2 hours ago. I can go train. I haven't had to take Tylenol or ibuprofen for a day. My fever's gone. My energy levels are back. And then you can start building back into, graduated return. And so instead, going for a walk is a good first step and seeing how your heart rate responds to that.
Yeah, so elevated heart rate,
so
keeping an eye on that too.
Yeah. And so then you can, obviously when you're sick and recovering, that you can use an RPE scale, right? And so everything's going to feel harder. Going for a light jog when you're recovering from an illness is going to have a much higher RPE than when you're not sick. And so you're kind of listening to your body in that way. But past that, it's going to be, you can, if you have other tools and toys and technology that you use, it can give you a lot of other data. And so, and so, I have my Whoop that I like, that gives me that data overnight in recovery. And so it'll, as I see my heart rate variability come back to normal, I know that my body is getting back to a place where training is a more realistic thing. If my resting heart rate's still, elevated and heart rate variability is still low and it's giving me bad recovery scores, I can pretty safely assume that my body's not ready to take on any significant training load. And so it's just another way to kind of incorporate the technology we all have. Your Garmin's are going to do a similar thing. You can, if you're not looking at heart rate variability, just resting heart rate will generally be higher when you're still sick and come back down to normal when you've recovered.
And I know it kind of, obviously these are, our Garmin's have a wrist-based heart rate, but I can still kind of tell. I'll just keep an eye. I'll look every morning and I'll be like, oh, it's normally, like 54 or something like that. And then I notice when we travel, like we went over to Spain, we're up at like 67 and it stays there for a couple of days. Then it goes back down. And so even, as a woman, like during certain times of my cycle, it'll hop up too. And so I can kind of see if it's been trending high for, a couple of days, there's something going on. And I'm like, did I have particularly hard workouts? Maybe I didn't do great, like hydrating after, because I sweat a lot. So having to drink a lot, there's a couple reasons, or maybe, am I feeling like I might be coming down with something? So we all have these fun devices. So they're kind of helpful that way too, not just, sports wise, but.
Yeah, it gives you a lot of data, and most of the time it's data overload of, what do I do with all of it? But it can be helpful. And so if you're looking at trends like Brittany does, oftentimes your device may tell you, in advance that something's coming. I remember, the first go around I had when I had COVID, my kind of heart rate variability dropped one morning, and I was like, that's weird. I didn't think much of it. And then probably 12 hours later, symptoms hit. And so my device knew kind of before I did, because my body had given it signals.
And then, recovery can take, depending on what it is, a long time. I mean, when he had COVID, it was seriously, how many months until you could run and like breathe?
It was good, like, six weeks that first go around. But I mean, and that's, everyone's a little bit different with how, whether it's flu, COVID, a cold. I mean, you can, with a common cold, have a cough for 6 weeks sometimes after that. And that can be a completely normal thing. So it just depends on your body, how it responds to each individual illness. So
we have reached the question and answer portion of the evening. Jimmy, since you are our live customer, do you have any questions that you would like to ask Matt?
Am I on? Can you hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. No, I was really curious about the speed going downhill, how you managed to maybe stay in arrow, get out of arrow. How you just felt going around those turns?
Yeah.
I was tracking you and I thought, oh man, he's going to wipe out if he keeps that up.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean, I was out of arrow most of the time. I kind of staying low on the bike, but I was on my base bars.
Right.
When it was straightaways, I would get down an arrow and just rest and go from there. But anytime there were twists and turns, I was on the base bars just for a little bit more stability.
Right.
and managing crosswinds. And so you know when you're coming around a corner that it's a real possibility that there is going to be wind. And so you just kind of have to be ready for it. And so just expect that at some point you're just going to get whacked by some wind, and kind of you let the bike go a little bit, and you just stay, you give it a lean and let the bike lean the other way, just like you would if you're going quickly around a corner. But yeah, I mean, it's for sure an acquired skill descending mountains. And this wasn't even a super technical course. And so everyone who's going to be doing the next year's course in Nice, they're got a lot of some of those hairpins that they're going down. It requires a lot more descending ability than what this did, but they'll probably have less wind because it won't be as exposed.
We were lucky though, because we did training camp with our coaches up in Greenville, South Carolina, which they've got, some mountains, not quite like Spain, but Matt's coach Carell he taught us like how to descend properly. And so things that I didn't know that I always used to do, he's like, you have to do it in his Czech accent, but he's like,
I will not.
We're not a flamingo. You're not a flamingo when you ride a bike. So a lot of people, when you go around a corner, you have to lift up inside leg. So always, turn this way, lift inside leg up, turn this way, lift inside leg up. And the reason is so the pedal doesn't scrape the ground. So that's when you're, but if you are doing on a straightaway, you should not have one leg up and one leg down, because that's a very unstable position. So 2 pedals, horizontal and even, weight in your feet, like very heavy weight in your feet. And a lot of times we'll just like get up off of the saddle and push back as far as we can. Because if you're like up, and a lot of people will lock out their arms and they get like this. Well, now you made yourself very tall and you're like a sail and you're catching the air, which a lot of people are like, it feels a little better because you slow down. But you're actually much more stable if you bend your elbows and get down low and then push your butt back as far as you can. And that's helped me descend so much better, just like the even weight in the pedals. And
yeah, and what you're doing is also with the weight in the pedals is that's where you're pushing through, right? So you're getting your weight down through the pedals, which is the lowest portion of the bike, keeping that center of gravity low. Instead of what people have a tendency to put all their weight on their hands, and so that keeps your center of gravity so much higher on the bike, and so it's less stable.
And then on the long descents, it kills your hands, because then you're
that's where if you've ever watched anyone descend and you've seen a speed wobble, right, where you're going fast enough and the bike starts shaking, it's because usually you have too much weight high up on the bike. If you're pushing down through the pedals, it can kind of settle that down.
And that's something that can help on even like other courses that are not as extreme as Spain, like Garmin Lake Placid. You even got some like 70.3 Wisconsin.
Yeah. Chattanooga's got a pretty good descent.
Chattanooga's got
1 or 42.
Maine 70.3's got, not descent's a lot more climbing, but honestly, you have to learn. Even Claremont down here, you can get 35 going down the hill. So you have to learn. And that's why I'm always like, it's great to ride indoors, and we do indoor training during the week, but on the weekend you have to get outside and ride the bike, because you have to learn how to negotiate, turns, corners, stopping, descending, climbing, riding in wind, getting in and out of aero, and you just can't replicate those things.
Riding in rain,
different conditions.
Riding in cold rain.
Yeah.
So that we didn't have prepared jackets.
Yes, he's talking about the fact that we need some rain gear. We need cold weather gear.
A lot.
Yeah. It's gotten a little bit chilly lately. But so that was one of my most exciting things I learned this year, was how to descend, and also how to do U-turns properly. That's another thing. Like, people will go to courses or races and they don't know how to do a turn, and that's you see them clip out and they're like, well, there's hundreds of athletes coming behind you. So then that creates a dangerous situation. But it has taken me, weeks of practicing U-turn. It's easier to do a U-turn on a road bike than a tri-bike because they're down lower. But yeah, we learned how to do that properly this year too.
And so back to the descending, and one last thing that occurred to me as we were talking. So, there will be times when descending, like Brittany doesn't want to go faster than 36 or 37. Yeah. And so, what you have to be careful of doing as descending is you just feather the brakes, so people tend to squeeze and, try and squeeze too hard. But if you're trying to scrub speed, it's just light application of the brakes.
So just like squeeze, release,
and it
squeeze,
kind of
release.
feathers, and you're pushing your butt back and you're staying low as you're doing that, because you can brake better as your butt's farther back.
Because you can't, even if you're, I mean, we have disc brakes on our bikes, but you can't hold on to the brakes an entire descent. That's not, you know.
Yeah. Other big descending things is you don't do any braking through the corners, because if you do, you'll lock up back wheels and slide, and that takes a lot more skill to save that, or you'll lock up your front wheel and just go over the handlebars.
All bad.
And so just, you scrub speed off before the corners. In the corners, you're going to pick up that inside leg. You're going to push your weight through the pedal that's down on the outside of the turn. And that's the key.
Like shift your weight out.
Yeah. And so that's really it's not just picking the inside leg up so the pedal doesn't scrape. It's pushing through that outside pedal, because that's where it's keeping your center back, your gravity there, and it's keeping you stable through the corner. And that's been a big point of emphasis for me, is I'd pick my leg up, but I never was really applying the pressure that I needed to. And so doing that, going down the mountains, I was a lot happier and a lot more stable. And actually that was the only time on the bike course where I started to pass a few people, was that last descent when I got comfortable.
And you can, I tend to pass more people descending than I do climbing. And so you can definitely, it's a skill, and our coaches call it terrain management. So we've had races before where, Matt will kind of be hanging around another guy and they'll seem similar size and they'll compare their stats afterwards, power and, what we pushed. And this guy can push, a lot more. He's pushing more power than Matt. Matt actually has a higher mile per hour average than he does. And there are different factors that can go into that, aerodynamics and such, but also because he's managing the terrain a little bit better, because the goal is not to push the most power out of everyone. It's to go as fast as you can. So if you are able to take, a better line on corners, if you're able to climb without, big spikes in power, you're going to get off and run better. So just but those are all skills you have to learn. And unfortunately it's something that you cannot learn, inside on the trainer. So outside rides are very important, but
we don't have those kind of hills here in Florida. So
yeah, we got to go a little bit to get some big ones, but it's fun. And I actually think that climbing courses, now that I'm a little bit better at it, it's a little fun. It's a little more fun than just flat, at least you get a little help, because on a flat course, it's all your own power, right? You get no assistance.
I think I would take the rolling hills of Chattanooga over
rolling
the 10-mile climb of Marbella.
But I think since Matt did, we did the whole international experience, I think we would be more open now to doing another one. Because in North Carolina, I qualified for a Nice, and we were like, it was mostly because we were just getting ready. We paid a lot of money to go to the Spain one. We're like, maybe we don't need to give you that much more money right this second. But also, we never done an international race, and so we're kind of now that we've done it once, we're like, oh, that was not that scary. I can see in the future, if either of us were to qualify again, that we would definitely do it, because it's a lot of fun, and you got to race in a completely different, beautiful place and turn it into a vacation. And so it was a lot of fun. But I'm gonna go feed him dinner now. So it was nice
getting
you
guys
with you, and have a very Merry Christmas.
You too. See you guys later.
Bye.